I want to share James 4:3 with you. But let's start at 1. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire but do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. I'm going to read that again. James chapter 4, starting from 1 through 3. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire but do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. And so the King James Version says, from whence comes wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence, even of your lusts that war in your members? You lust and have not, you kill, and desire to have and cannot obtain. You fight and war, yet you have not because you ask not. You ask and receive not because you ask amiss, that you may consume it upon your lust. And then it goes on in verse 4 to say, you adulterers and adulteresses, know you not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. And according to this other version I read, it says, you adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Therefore, anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. All right? So I want to talk about something. Again, the Lord has me with people who they're asking God to bless them, and yet the reason why you're not being blessed is because of your motive and your heart. There is a general blessing, a default of provisions, let's put it like that, that's made for all humanity, whether you are saved or not, whether you're human or you are Billy Goat out in the fields. God provides for all living things that he creates. Even the evil person, he obviously allowed them to wake up again because he's God. Just as he says, he causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust, and the sun to shine on both the just and the unjust. So there's certain provisions that's given to all humanity simply because of the goodness of God, but not necessarily because you're a great person. Now, those who are following the Lord, there's certain levels of blessings that he will give to them, that he will entrust them with. But if you're conforming to the world, and people who say that they're God, that they're looking at the world and what the world considers blessings, is how you find a lot of believers running behind and trying to keep up with the worldly fads and what the world says is fashionable. You know, you have believers want to be able to open up their door and say, welcome to my crib. You know, I used to watch Cribs coming up where it was like these people let you into their house and you see the foyer and everything, and the indoor outdoor pool and all this stuff, and you know, the landing strips, all of that. And so the world will try to follow that. Well, there's a lot of people who God is not giving you stuff because you will cuss God out for $200. You will stop serving God over $2,000. So imagine if he gave you 20 or 200,000. You curse God while you're living in a shanty. What would you do if you are living in a great big house? You will do far more. And so sometimes people want to be blessed because they want to be like this person. I want to be able to make it rain with my cash. I want to be able to, sometimes you're motivated for wealth so you can prove to others who talk down to you that you made it. There are lots of people who have made it to the top because they were driven by their bitterness and their hurt and the rejection of their childhood or a relationship they encountered at some point in their life. And so they get to the top, but they're still bitter. Their interpersonal skills, social skills, their ability to reason and to see another point of view is shot. And they say that they're Christians. They say that they're believers. And so we have to examine ourselves, because it's going to be these quote unquote little things that's going to get a lot of people. People want blessings, but for what? You may say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, but are you doing it now with the little that you have? You may not be able to give everyone everything that you have, but are you a giver now? Are you a kind person now? If you loan someone $10, do you act as if you have loaned them $100 million? How do you behave? How do you treat people now? You want a fancy car? God, I'm going to help people. Do you help people right now? Do you give someone a ride in your Datsun? Are you giving someone a ride in your Nova? Are you giving someone a ride in just your regular car? Or do you make a big deal about it? Are you going to be a kind person? You see, people have a way of elevating themselves above others. Even the poor will elevate themselves above one another if they are not careful, because they have two chairs versus the people who sit on the floor. They're still poor, but they have two chairs. So they'll elevate themselves even though they are poor. You see, pride is not necessarily just the rich. Even those who are poor can have pride, can elevate themselves because I have more than you. I have 2 steam buns, you have 1. My shirt has no holes in it, or my shirt only has 1 hole, yours have 3. So it's really a hard thing that has to be investigated and looked at. But there are some people you're asking God and you're praying to God for certain things, but God knows that your character does not fit what you're asking for. And if you're given it, you will use it against others. Now, what the Lord originally had me to talk about, and I'm going to add it here, is about people who maybe God blesses you. Maybe at some point in your life, you were humble and God blessed you. And even some people, you are not humble, but you have a gift and a talent and an ability that belongs to God, that you were able to get your business. You were able to do well with what God gives you. You may not acknowledge God, but it does not change the fact that He gave you the ability, that's particular skill, to be able to do what you do, and now you're making money. And so these individuals they are thriving, they're doing well, and they do what? Well, what does it say here? It says, you ask with the wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasure. So not only do these individuals, that they may spend things that God gives them on their own pleasures, but they become prideful. And if you read, I believe it is Proverbs 7, I think, where it talks about the sins that God hates, and pride is one of them. So what happens is business owners, get over to the Christian side, those of you that said that you're a believer of God, whether you say you're Christian or believer, what you could do is you could end up, it's Proverbs 6 that talks about the 7 things that God hates. You could end up mismanaging your blessing because you have so much. So when your customers, your clients, your patrons enter your business, you're cutting corners in how you're treating them because you have so much. When God gives you things and you ask God to bless you, you change in your heart because you have so much excess that now you feel like people are at your disposal, and you will mistreat these individuals. Paying customers, you're not giving them the quality item. Paying customers, you're giving them faulty items. Paying customers, you don't render to them the same courtesy as you will be to your best or your number one customers. In the area of, say, hair and beauty, you have a successful business, but you may not put in as much effort to someone because you feel like they're paying you the same price, but you may look at them from head to toe and be like, oh, I'm not gonna make much time for them. Or your favorite customer comes in, your favorite client walks through the door. Well, here's a customer, a paying customer that has an appointment, and you will bump that person and put this person in their chair. Whether you're a beautician or you're a barber, you're an entrepreneur in a restaurant, the blessings that God has given you, what are you doing with it? How are you treating people? You're still taking their money and you're giving them little care. You're giving them subpar service. You're taking their money. And the Bible talks about people who they do things with a scale. You know, when people are weighing items on a scale, they have a way they could kind of rig the scale and cheat people. You may not be using scales, but you're rigging people. These individuals will still be rigging others, just selling products that's not what they claim it to be. And the people are paying for quality meats, quality products, and getting something that's faulty. Or they get so high up, I've seen this, where they're just slacking off and sitting around and doing whatever. Now God has given them the ability to excel, and they're slacking around and sitting around. And if a customer has a complaint and say, hey, I've been here for a while or whatever, because they have so much money, they feel that, you know what, then leave then. Instead of doing what's right, they get haughty. I remember a while back, because I normally read reviews on places before I go. And if I mess around and didn't read the review and I had a bad experience, I tend to go back to check if there's been reviews on this place where I would see some things that, okay, that was my experience as well. And I was reading some reviews at this particular business, and I mean, every time I'm talking about 15 plus different people that had similar experiences of how it was when they entered this place, how they behaved. And I mean, to each of those responses, the business owner was basically shutting down everybody, shutting them all down. And I was able to see why that business is the way it is. Because how can 15 plus people that don't know each other be saying the same things? And it's just making excuses and blaming the customer, saying this is not true. So it made me understand the climate of that place and why I experienced what I experienced, and actually ended up leaving. And those of you're in business, God gave you that increase. And what some of you are doing is because your intentions and what you wanted that business for, perhaps it was right at first, and maybe it was never right. So when you get it and you begin to increase, you begin to mismanage people. The Bible says, when you receive, you do not ask, you do not receive when you ask, because you have the wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasure. So when your customers are coming in and they are giving you money, you're not about exchanging and giving them quality service, but taking their money to get what you want while mistreating them and basically just giving them poor service. But this is a reflection of your character as a believer of God. And so these little areas have to change. Some of you have businesses, and you know there's a standard how you're supposed to keep your restaurant, how you're supposed to keep the things in the back, how you're supposed to be handling the food. Just because people don't see you, God sees what you're doing. You may have a beauty and barber shop or whatever. There's a way that you're supposed to be doing things. There's that barber side should not start looking like a science experiment, but when the inspectors are coming out, then you're hopping and skipping and you're cleaning up and you're having everything and you're telling everybody knows, hey, we got to clean up. But when the inspector leaves and once you pass your inspection, you go back to putting your clients at risk. God sees these things. And there's a lot of people that they don't acknowledge God, but God has given them talents and abilities. There are people that we see right now. They are race car drivers. They are great swimmers. They are great orators. They are actors, actresses. They are, everybody want to be actor. Okay, actor, actresses, whatever you call yourselves. They can, great mountain bikers, hikers, all of these things, entrepreneurs, businessmen, conglomerates. They can do all these things and they just think, oh, this is all me. No, God gave you that. Those of you, you're singing, celebrities that they're singing, you see them on TV and they're doing all this stuff and they're living that life. That is the gift and abilities that God gave to them that works regardless. Whether they're serving him or not, their ability to work on their craft and their ability, and it just grows and they become these wonderful individuals, fantastic, and they own all the stuff. Their ability is what God gives to them. Now, what they choose to do with that ability at that point, even though they may never have this conversation face to face with the devil, is just like what Jesus encountered with Satan. If you will worship me, all these things will I give to you. What does worship mean? Denying God. If you worship the devil, you deny God. You may not fall down at your knees and bow down to him, but you bow down in your will. You bow down into your mindsets and your behavior. You bow down to the alcohol, the drugs, the anger, the works of the flesh, whatever it may be, choosing another God, doing your own thing. You're bound down to him. So these individuals that don't serve God, they bow down and then they get the celebrity status and they get the money and they get this. But then what we find out, a lot of them, they got so much wealth, they don't know what to do. So much wealth and they're still taking their lives. So much wealth and they still don't like themselves. So they go and they get plastic surgery and start looking like Muppets. Get plastic surgery and just different, changing their bodies, doing this, changing their skin. I'm too dark, or I'm too, well, I never said light, and so they go and they tan in and they look orange, and I'm too dark, so they bleach their skin and now they're lighter, but they still look weird because they didn't realize that when God gave them that skin tone, there was a whole masterpiece of the way he created them, that he created their features that would match their skin. So they rub their skin off, or they take their skin tone off and now they're a lighter tone, but now their features don't look right. So now they have to keep going. Oh, let me change my nose and everything. And at the very core of every last one of us, that's not what your body is. So your body is still going to function the way it is and be true to that DNA and your makeup and to what God has called to be so. So you can do all you want to do, but before you know it, that person start looking a mess, half erased, nipped and tucked, and then they just start looking like ferrets, moles, just a little bit of everything. A walking seahorse, they just start looking crazy. And then with all that plastic surgery and all the stuff that they're doing with their wealth, their face is still puffing out because their true identity is underneath all those things. And so that's why they end up looking like Klingons, because they put this thing over what God has called to be so. If God said, let there be a flat forehead, or let there be a forehead that's this way, and you try to plastic that, the spoken word of God is still going to start to come through all of that you put on. And so now you made a mess, and now your forehead start getting lumps and bumps. You got to fill it with this, and but the Lord's command is still there, and the body is still going to be the underneath all that stuff that they've done to change themselves. The body is still under the spoken word of God. Let there be. So they keep nip and tucking their nose until there's nothing left. Then what happened? Start looking like a spotted giraffe, because you can't undo what God creates without changing yourself. You take your dark skin off and you realize your features don't match your new color. Oh my goodness, guys. I stayed there for a while, but I'm back. And so what we have to realize, we have to check ourselves, and what is it that you want? How do you act now? If your behavior now and your obedience to God now, your character right now is incumbent on whether or not God can truly trust you with certain things. And it will give you a reason and tell you why it is you don't have certain things right now, because you still need to grow. A part of the whole armor of God is the belt of truth, and that is your character, and that you're willing to be led by the Spirit of God in those areas that may not be so nice, that you're willing to work on those things and change. That you are not a walking apology, constantly apologizing, but never changing. And the last thing that I will say is this. Those of you that when God has blessed you, be mindful of what you're doing with your gift and your talents. How are you treating people? How are you operating your business? How are you operating your firm? How are you treating your clients that come in? Are you fair and impartial, or are you partial? Are you rude? Are you always late? Because all those things that you do, guys, God looks at it. That you can cheat, you can make up stories, you can go online and pay people to write good reviews about your bad business, but the bottom line is God sees what you are doing, and that's who you need to fear. Because when it's all said and done and you leave this life, you're going to leave your stores and all your stuff behind, and your stocks and your IRAs and all this stuff. You're going to stand before God by yourself, without your store, without your suit. You're going to stand before him as a soul and give account for everything that you've done. And those who don't want to believe in God and they don't want to hear what he has to say, and, oh, look at me, I'm doing so well. No, the gift of God is excellent, whether you serve him or not. But once you get in alliance with the enemy and he begins to bless you, just know there's a price that you're going to pay. He's going to give you everything, because your soul is worth far more than all the things that you can ever acquire, all the things that he could ever open doors and allow you to receive. The Bible says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and to lose his own soul? And the devil in his mind is like, yeah, I give you a whole lot of stuff. I give you the wealth and the house and the yachts and the accolades and everything and all of that. And you can continue to use the gift and talents that God has given you that you don't acknowledge, but I'm going to manage that. And we're going to do some things in this world. And we're going to draw some people away from the Lord together. And when it's all said and done, you will face me in eternity. Because the bottom line is Satan wants you to suffer with him, because he knows his end, and he wants you to suffer as well. And so that's what happened to those individuals. So guys, be good stewards of what God has given to you. Do a self-check. How do you behave when you don't get what you want? How do you behave? Are you a person that covet? Covet is a spirit. So don't think that just you're coveting now. You'd be like, well, I'm poor, of course I'm going to covet. No, you don't have to covet. You don't have to. Can you be happy for people when they have things? Do you covet? Are you envious? Because you're going to be that way even when you're wealthy. But now you have money to knock them out the park, or to do things, get rid of the people that you're jealous of. That's the only difference. You don't have money. You can only be mad and go home and write on the mirror with some crayon or something to be mad, and punch the mirror or whatever you do and wish something bad to happen to them. But imagine if that same jealousy and that same coveting, you not have the power to take what you want away from somebody, because you have the power to do it. That's why God will not give individuals like that a bunch of money. He won't. And those who have nasty attitudes and nasty behaviors that you see that are oppressing other people, God did not put them in that position. The enemy is now their manager. That's it. And so he'll take them in a whole different direction to use what God have given them to help others, to now begin to oppress others, to take from others, i.e. those false prophets and ministers out there, as well as people that don't know God at all. They're just evil. But with the talents and the abilities that he has given to them, they now fall under the hand of Satan, who uses them to be wicked individuals out in the world, oppressing, hurting other people. And they're going to stand before God for that. So I'm going to end here. The things that you're asking God for, check your motives. The things that you have not received from God. Sometimes God just simply wants you to wait. Sometimes there are things that still needs to be worked on in your character. And other time, God knows there's no way that I can give you this right now, because you have some areas in your life and within your heart that is unyielded. And I cannot entrust you with this level of blessing, because you will destroy others. This is not for everybody, but I guarantee you that it is for somebody. God bless.